All right, guys, what's going on? End of January, we are about to wrap up with our 2024 recap shows. We're ended it with top 10 TV shows of 2024. I'm joined by Big J Zhao, aka Unyolo Movie Blogs, and Eric Thorpe, first time back on the channel since 2021. I want to say, first of all, it's good to have you guys back on. It's been a minute since I've had you guys on.
How you doing? Thanks for the invite.
Of course, man. Anytime.
Yeah,
all right.
thanks for having me.
Of course, gentlemen, let's talk some TV. So, as is in the title of this podcast, 2024 was a weird year for TV. It was a weird year in general for everything across the board, but I feel like with TV in general, which has been pretty consistent as far as delivering on some on interesting, I would say, counter programming towards film. You know, obviously we know that in the wake of streaming, that's where all the good creatives went, but obviously, you know, COVID in a weird way was kind of the best thing for TV, but I feel like post the strikes and the end of the peak prestige wave that we saw last year in 2023, it was struggling a bit this year. You know, I feel like TV kind of was trying to find its new identity midway through the decade. You know, like I said, we had some of the absolute best miniseries that I feel like we've ever had of all time. Like, I feel like it was kind of a throwback to like that period when like you would have these really interesting miniseries, you know, like your Roots and such on TV, you know, or like when what's it called? When David Simon did The Corner on HBO prior to him doing The Wire. But as far as kind of like, let's call it the franchisification of TV that we've been seeing recently, yeah, kind of fell flat this year, you know, while also like rearing its head in different ways. So this was, I think, a record-breaking year for Taylor Sheridan, who's probably been the most prolific showrunner of the last, I would say, 6 years now, you know, with the final season of Yellowstone airing alongside new seasons of all of his recent original shows that he's done. Mayor of Kingstown, Special Ops Lioness, Tulsa King, and his brand new show, Landman, premiering this year in November, which kind of ended up getting a lot of the attention in Q4 of the year. Cobra Kai returned for the first two of its three parts of its final season, splitting its final season of 15 episodes into three different parts, which it aired its first two batches of 5 episodes. Its final batch, which will be aired in February. No new seasons of White Lotus, no new season of Yellow Jackets, no new season of Last of Us. All of that was no new season of Stranger Things. All of those were delayed until next year. We had some big swings. We had some misses. So before we get started with these top 10s and honorable mentions, I just want to hear from both of you guys what your thoughts were in general on TV in 2024. Zhao, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think you hit a nail before. I think TV, the problem is starting to become like movies. If it's a hit, you're gonna like just do season after season after season. We had some shows that are supposed to be like a mini series, and now even Shogun is already in talks to have a second season. And this is the thing, when a story is not like thought from the beginning, sometimes it works, but then it just starts getting a bit too much. And I think that's the problem with most of the shows. There's shows that I would probably put in my top like 3 in the first season, and now are coming low, and some of them are not even making it. And also like this thing of like splitting the shows because they have to, like, Netflix has to have people getting back. So Cobra Kai is a good example for me. It's not even going to show on the list because for me, it's not an ended product. I have to wait for the rest. So I think we're going to see the same thing. And the other thing is, like, this happens also when Marvel and stuff, like, we are always comparing with some shows that are completely outstanding. And then we say, oh, the quality is not. But if we compare some of these shows, we are complaining about the quality with the TV of a few years ago. They're still amazing. So I think the people are more like the bar is higher. So now you have to be amazing. You have to be the show that everyone's talking about, or people are going to talk like they're disappointed. I think that's the problem TV put himself because of the quality they were always delivering. But there's still a lot of good shows. I'm more a movie guy, you know, but there's some shows that capture me this year, and I watched it all. And that for me is like, it has to be a good show to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, but that's a big thing with me now, is like, not only if you capture my attention, but can I make it to the end of your season? Because the other problem too that I found is that it's becoming harder for me to binge stuff. It really is. I used to be able to binge shows like nonstop, and now it's like, even with Netflix, I'm like, if I'm not into it after like the first 2 or 3 episodes, I'm probably not finishing the season overall. Because that's the other problem too, is that even though the amount of TV that I feel like we've gotten is drastically less, thankfully, than previous years, there's still so much that I have to keep up with. And like, me binging all of for example, like, people may have forgotten that we got the Netflix live action remake of Avatar: The Last Airbender this year, but that was a year ago, like almost in February this year. So I'm just like, the fact that I binged all of that in a weekend, looking back, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I would not be able to do that now. And what you were saying about Cobra Kai, another example that I was thinking of is Invincible. Where Invincible, fantastic second season, but because they split it up where they put the first 4 episodes in the fall, and then they had that gap, and then they had the second 4 episodes in the spring, I'm like, I didn't know how to count it. So Invincible is not on my top 10 list. It's a very strong honorable mention. It was just outside, but Invincible is not on my top 10 list. A couple other ones that I felt like flopped incredibly hard, because we got some flops this year. Final seasons of What We Do in the Shadows and Umbrella Academy both went out with a whimper. Both shows that had pretty strong starts a couple years ago that both went out with a whimper, if I do say so myself. The Boys season 4, very underwhelming. Disney Plus's entire slate this year between Marvel and Star Wars. I mean, the fact that objectively the best one of those that you can say is Skeleton Crew and Agatha should tell you where they are as far as their quality goes. Hack season 3, disappointment for me. And also one that I had very high expectations for, Bill Lawrence, who was killed previously on Apple with Ted Lasso and with Ted Lasso and Shrinking. Bad Monkey with Vince Vaughn, his third show that he did this year, very, very underwhelming to me. Eric, what are your thoughts on TV for the year of 2024?
I mean, I would echo, I guess, a bit of what both of you have said, but also at the same time, I mean, I think there's still just been, like, I think there's been some that have been disappointing, like you said. Like, I'll get into some, but I still liked. And then there's been some that I thought were going to be good, and then they were. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a mix of, like, I guess, you know, it's hard to kind of really say that it's really just because of the franchiseification of it all. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of that, and I think they're like diluting their brands. That's been a thing, I think, ever since COVID, by just kind of making like spin-offs of spin-offs and things like that. Like Agatha, like you mentioned. I don't know. I was not as high on that one as most people.
Yeah, that was getting a lot of positive attention.
I watched it all till the end because I haven't missed any MCU stuff so far, but I didn't really like it, and I loved WandaVision. So
yeah, MCU was 0 for 2 for me this year. I didn't watch Echo and I didn't watch Agatha, and yeah, like what else? Obviously, again, like, how could we forget their infamous summer bomb, The Acolyte? Which I will say, I was a steadfast Acolyte watcher, and I will say that everyone was like, "Oh, this is crap" from the beginning. I'm like, I was with it. I'm like, okay, I don't really know what we're getting here, but I'm kind of fascinated. I still don't know if this is like they're just taking a big swing, or if this is just so bad that it's entertaining. But it wasn't until the finale and I saw what was happening, I'm like, oh no, fuck this show. Like, could just completely shat the bed, ended with a whimper. Another show that people were really, really hot on in the beginning of the year, that was a big, big Emmy darling, that for me as time went on, I don't know, it just didn't last as long. Maybe this will make one of your guys' top 10, I'm not sure. Baby Reindeer. That was one where, like, again, got all this attention, became this massive, like, those infamous Netflix out of nowhere viral phenomenons. And then after it got all those Emmy nominations and wins, it kind of just left the stratosphere. I don't know. Like, were you guys in on the Baby Reindeer phenomenon? Because I was kind of like, I watched the show, I thought it was solid, but I don't know. There was just something about it where I'm like, this feels icky, you know? And then obviously it had the lawsuit afterwards where it's like, oh yeah, the dude like made up a lot, embellished a lot of stuff. So
yeah,
you go, Eric.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I did. Baby Reindeer and what's it called? The Acolyte. Those are two I never finished. I started. But Baby Reindeer was a lot better than The Acolyte, to be fair. But I mean, yeah, I got like 3 episodes in and I was liking it, but then I just, for whatever reason, was like, I don't know. I don't think I need to see any more of this. You know?
Yeah.
It's sort of like,
That's about where I was feeling too. And then begrudgingly I finish it and I'm like, oh, why
yeah.
did I finish this?
I feel like there's always one of those shows every year, especially more in TV even than movies maybe, that just like kind of just becomes this thing on Netflix, and then everyone gets caught up in it, and I never really get it. Like there's always like that, and then there's like, I don't know, even Squid Game. I never got into that one.
I didn't even watch Squid Game season 2 this year. Like I didn't even bother because the way that season 1 ended, I'm like, they tacked that cliffhanger on just for extra seasons because that show was done, wrapped. You could tell that creator had that whole 9-episode thing drafted out as a complete thing, and they tacked that cliffhanger on. And then from what I heard, when season 2 they did the exact same shit, and they're like, oh, they're queuing up for like a 3rd season. That's gonna be the I'm like, yeah, I don't need to watch this. Like Squid Game 2 was one that I just completely skipped. Also, funny, Eric, that you were mentioning, the franchisification of TV, because HBO literally put out a show this year called The Franchise from Armando Iannucci, the creator of The Thick of It and Veep. Also, his colleague Jesse Armstrong went on to create Succession, and I watched all 8 episodes of it, and man, talk about an underwhelming, like half-assed attempt at trying to criticize pop culture, but with outdated jokes that felt like over 10 years old, where we're like, we're going to construct the behind the scenes of like this mess of a movie franchise that's going to be like the MCU. And it was not nearly as clever and really kind of got irksome and annoying as time went on. Real quick before we get started with these lists, do you guys have any honorable mentions that you want to rattle off? Jean, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I put some of the shows that I loved, but this year, like Boys season 4, Cobra Kai, Invincible, and then there's one that I actually liked that didn't make the list. And now that I heard you guys talking about some of the shows that I have on the list, maybe I should have put. But Under the Bridge, I don't know if you saw that. The limited
Right, yeah,
series.
that was one that I missed.
Yeah, and it was really, really good, but just didn't make my top 10. But yeah, those shows. And again, Cobra Kai is fun, but it's starting to get always the same over and over. And The Boys is still fun, but I don't know. They just start diluting the fun of it. And the other one that All Murders in the Building, I think now is just. It's just too much, like always the same people happening, that it starts getting to a point that it becomes ridiculous. They all, like, the actors are all still fun to see together, but if they want to continue, they need to find something else. But the title doesn't help because it has to happen in the building. But those are the ones that kind of dropped off. All the Murders in the Building was one that I had in my top 3 a couple of years ago. But now it's just getting too repetitive, and that's why I prefer British TV. They know where to stop. They have amazing shows that you want to see more, and they stop, and they know why, because it starts diluting.
Exactly. Well, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because there is one British TV show that even if it does keep doing the same thing over and over again, I will watch the new season every year, and more than likely it will make its way into my top 10 every year. But you're so right. Like I'm so glad that you brought that up, where it's like, again, it's like I feel like we as TV watchers are constantly combating the sameness of TV, because that seems to be the thing that, again, not only has kept TV alive this whole time, but that's, I feel like, a thing that people consistently gravitate towards, because every like quote unquote regular person that I see, they love the sameness of TV, and they love just watching the same generic doctor cop procedural shows. Like there's a reason why The Rookie is on its 7th season. And like, have any of you watched or even seen that show? I guarantee you haven't, but I guarantee that you have seen the shorts in your Facebook and YouTube feeds constantly nonstop. So I feel like that's kind of what we're constantly combating as TV watchers, Eric, you got any honorable mentions you want to rattle off?
Yeah, I have 2, just because like they were like kind of definitely above all the other shows I saw this year, but for me at least, but not they didn't quite make that top 10. But yeah, and I know already one of them you're gonna be like, why is that not in your top 10? And one of them you're gonna be like, why is that even an honorable mention? So
at least you already know my reactions.
So in no particular order, I guess I'll just go in release order, I guess. So, yeah, it didn't make my top 10, but I still did really enjoy it as it was airing. But it just sort of I've only kind of gone down on it since it ended, but that would be the most recent season of True Detective. So yeah, that's the one I know you're not the biggest.
I know people like it. I did not like it. I'm glad that you brought that up though, because again, that's another one where I'm just like, oh man, talk about needing to let a franchise die. Like Jesus Christ.
Like I'll say that it was easily like my least favorite season of that show, but like the other seasons, like even the second and third, I think are really underrated.
I agree.
I love all the first 3 seasons are like some of the best seasons of TV I've ever seen. And this season, I was kind of annoyed with it by the end, and the more you hear about it, how Nick Pizzolatto kind of had the show like taken away from him, it's frustrating, and it seemed like it was gonna tie into season 1 possibly, but then that was sort of just like a gimmick, and then it didn't actually. So it was just like, it sort of just frustrated me on all levels, but at the same time, I don't know, I enjoyed it as it came out each week, and I enjoyed watching it, and I thought like it was well done still at the same time. So you know what I mean? So it makes the honorable mention. And then the other one, which I know you're gonna have in your top 10, didn't quite make mine, but I thought it was really good. Just I can't ever say I like got fully hooked in enough to really put it in there. Would be Shogun.
Oh, that hurts. True Detective, I'm like, listen, I understand if you have an honorable mention, even though I didn't like what. Oh man.
I mean, it was close. No, it's not even. But again, it's more just like a preference thing, I think.
Okay.
You know, I watched it all. I thought it was really good, but I think maybe it's something that on a rewatch could go up. I don't know. It's just, I think there was just too much, maybe just because of like that I didn't understand with like the difference in like the culture and stuff. I couldn't like track as much like certain characters' motivations sometimes, and I wasn't sure exactly how to. I don't know. And I was sort of invested here and there, but I can't say I was like consistently as much as like the ones I have in my top 10. But it was super well done.
Oh man. Well, we'll have to potentially do some corrective therapy on you in order to make sure that you see the right way. I've got a couple of honorable mentions. I got The Gentleman on Netflix. Kind of again got lost in the shuffle early on in the year, but still solid. Tulsa King season 2. Arc, the animated series, which was another one that nobody saw, but it was done by a couple of animators that I really, really enjoy. Had an incredible voice cast. The Bear season 3, or should I call it The Bear season 3A, because season 4, which is coming this year, which is also the final season of The Bear. That's the other thing too. We're saying goodbye to The Bear this year, the most viral show of the last like couple years. What's it called? Because again, it was very clearly like a setup for the final season. So that's the only reason why it didn't make it. Tires on Netflix. Shane Gillis' show was hilarious. Invincible, second half of season 2. Like I said, only reason why it didn't make it. Alfonso Cuarón's Disclaimer on Apple TV was an interesting experiment in terms of, you know, playing out a story on perspective, and then kind of fell flat. Had two of the most bizarre and unintentionally hilarious performances from Kevin Kline and Sacha Baron Cohen. Kate Blanchett, as always, is great. Cobra Kai, the first 2 halves, the first 10 episodes that dropped, the first 5 which dropped in July, and the second 5 which dropped in November. And James Gunn's Creature Commandos are all my honorable mentions. So let's get this started. Zhao, we're gonna start with you, then we'll go to Eric, then we'll go to me for our 10. Zhao, what is your number 10?
Okay, I'm gonna start by saying sorry to everyone now that I heard all your comments. On number 10, I have Agatha All Along. So this started well. I think this is like, people did not give a chance to that show from the start. People like just add something against it. It was a lot of fun. It's a stupid show. And I think that sometimes people are just taking these goddamn shows too serious. I think Catriona, she's amazing. She's like amazing on that role. I'm really happy that now she's playing the mother in Tangled for the movie. So I just think she's a really good actress, and she brought it all in. And then Audrey Plaza and the twists in the end and everything. It was like one of those shows that I think if people gave it a chance would enjoy it more. So I had fun, watch it every week. I think compared with most of the shows that they had, they didn't put the expectations so high. So I think also like people just had fun with it. So I had that in my number 10, and that's just the start of the surprises. I
I
think.
can't wait. I can't wait. This is already going to be an incredible video. Yeah, like I said, it's not that I'll say this. It's not that I was willing to like completely crap all over the show. It's just the fact that I've just been so burned by Marvel TV in the past. I just was not. I saw it and I'm like, wait, it's just more Young Avengers setup. I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I just want Young Avengers. So that's kind of just what I'm waiting for as far as that goes. Eric, you're number 10.
Yeah, so my number 10 is Fallout. So this is just, I know you weren't quite as high on this one, but yeah, no, I'm just like, I know you're gonna have a lot of reactions to my list, but yeah, no, I just this was sort of one I felt like I had to include. Not that I thought it was like incredible, but it was one that was just, I don't know, I had a very easy time just like binging through it, and I just had a lot of fun with it, and it was just kind of a fun world to be in. And I'm only like, I've played the video game, but not like a ton. I've been like going through the one Fallout 3 for like a long time. Still, it's a long game, so the tone is actually a lot more I guess kind of quirky, I think, than the game is. So it was a bit, I don't know, I enjoyed it probably more than I ever enjoyed the game. And also, I mean, I probably gave it points even just because I knew it was Jonathan Nolan, and I'm excited to see whatever he does and everything. So yeah, I thought it was just fun, and I thought it was. I think it'll be cool to see where it goes. I think it's just a great setup for a show, and Ella Purnell was really fun in the lead, and Walton Goggins, and yeah, I just had a good time with it. So it comes in at number 10.
I'll say this much about Fallout, that Walton Goggins in this show, of the 4 episodes that I was able to make my way through, is so good. He's so good in everything that he does. Like, he's the type of, again, just the fact that he is the same man who came up with the character of Uncle Baby Billy on The Righteous Gemstones it's amazing. But again, it should be telling to, as far as like my enjoyment, and I use that in the loosest of quotes of that show, that even he wasn't enough to get me through it, because while the show looked good, the just bizarro tone all over the place, could not get a handle on it. The visuals were very wonky. Some of the performances and just the dialogue choices, I'm like, what? This feels like this is written by 3-year-olds. So yeah, was not a fan of it. I tried watching another episode over Christmas, and I'm like, oh yeah, nope, not a fan. Not a fan at all. I know a lot of people enjoyed it. Again, just not for me. My number 10, like I said, record-breaking amount, a Taylor Sheridan show, has not made my top 10 list up until this point, and that should tell you what kind of a year it was in 2024. Landman. Man, oh man. So Taylor Sheridan has taken us through prison systems. He's made a mafia sitcom, a modern day military show with action that's like on the level of like early 2000s Ridley Scott and Michael Bay military pictures. And now for his most popular and well-watched show so far since Yellowstone, he's made a show that is one part about the oil industry, one part about Mexican drug cartels, one part men in suits talking in rooms, and one part teen soap opera drama. And then you've also got Ali Larter just like providing entertainment for old folks by means of getting them drunk and taking them to striptease shows. The show is insane. Like, I'm not like, the thing about Taylor Sheridan shows that I enjoy is that they're not straight up like good quality TV, but he just understands something about how to make something entertaining while making sure that he gives the lead character enough like good gravitas. Like his characters I wouldn't exactly have the most depth to them, but the lead characters in all of his shows, you know, Kevin Costner, Jeremy Renner, Sylvester Stallone, Zoe Saldana, and now his latest lead, Billy Bob Thornton, who I would say this is probably the best role that Billy Bob has had in close to almost 20 years. I would say he's got some very, very juicy monologues. He's always the guy where in every situation he's in, no matter who he's facing off against, he's always going to be the smartest guy in the room. And the supporting characters that they bring in too, John Hamm is great. Ali Larter is very entertaining. I still can't get over the fact that his daughter is my age playing a 17-year-old. That just fucks with my head nonstop. The kid from Mud as his son, what's it called? Cooper Laughlin, I think is the kid's name, is great. Although that whole subplot, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell is going on. It's one of those shows where, again, I can't necessarily say that this is a good show, but in terms of just being that Q4 surprise that came in, was just entertaining enough to be like, man, this is enjoyable. I'm gonna keep watching this week to week, and then it kept impressing. And it's funny because the show had Andy Garcia listed in its credits, and I kept waiting and waiting. I'm like, when is Andy Garcia gonna show up? When is Andy Garcia gonna show up? And then he does in like the last like 10 minutes of the final episode, and it's one of the best surprise cameos of the year. So yeah, Landman, my number 10. Never thought I would see myself actually put a Taylor Sheridan show in my top 10, but here we are. Zhao, you're number 9.
Well, like, just to explain, all the TV shows I'll have here is sometimes they not have to be great, but they have something that straight away connects with me. And everything that has this character on, I love. So I don't know if you guys saw Cross. It's it's the show with Alex Cross and all these OGs like playing Alex Cross, and it's like, I love shows like that. I think it was really, really good. Like, that character is very, very cool. And he had like Ryan Egghold or something like that.
Yes.
He's like he plays like the bad guy, and he's creepy as shit. And I think the show did well. Like, for a first season, it did credits to the character. I love them in like movies and even other TV shows that I saw before. And this one was a lot of fun. It was well acted. You had like a good story. So, and it was another one that like I didn't know it existed, and I saw the first episode, and I kind of like saw it all in like 2 days. And that for me is, at least it got my attention. So from all the shows, I had to put this one in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Alex Cross show. Yeah, that was one that I had on my list. And man, it's just those Amazon action shows, all like the Terminal List, the Reachers, the Jack Ryans, all of them. I see them come up. I'm like, oh, those cool. I'll watch those at some point. And then I never end up watching them. It is a classic conundrum with me. But I'm glad that somebody watched it and enjoyed it. Eric, you're number 9.
Yeah, like Sha was saying, I think a lot of them are a lot of these shows that I have on here are, not necessarily always objectively what I think are the 10 best. Some of them are, but a lot of them are just the ones that connect with me the most. That's why I like some of these will be above Shogun, even though I know Shogun's like a better show. So just to preface with that, so the next one I have on here is probably the most like out of left field one, but it's a mini series spinoff of Inside Out on Disney Plus. Dream Productions, which I wasn't even really planning on watching, and then I just kind of put it on a whim, and it's actually like really good. I gotta say, nobody's talking about it, but I think like it's pretty much like an Inside Out movie. Like, it's like probably close to 2 hours long, the whole series, just broken up into 4 episodes, and it's like one ongoing thing. And it's even like the animation quality is like pretty much like the movies. It's actually pretty good. It's just focusing on that dream kind of department of Riley's brain, and it's got like a nice little arc and everything, and it's not just like one of those there was like some Monsters Inc. spinoff too. I think I've like tried 1 or 2 of the other ones and was immediately like, okay, there's not really anything here for me. But this one was actually like, oh, this is like a pretty solid little story. It's kind of a bit like The Office, the way it's like kind of mockumentary style a bit too. Yeah, I thought it was like just really amusing and clever in the same kind of way that the Inside Out movies are. So if you're a fan of those movies, I'd recommend checking out Dream Productions. I thought it was really clever and charming.
Eric, I think you've broken the internet history right now. You have made internet history. You are officially the first person that I know to have watched one of the Pixar spin-off TV shows on Disney Plus, and you are probably the first and possibly only person that I know right now to put them in your top 10. So that's worth noting in some capacity. I'll say that. My number 9, it's a little bit lower than usual, but honestly, the fact that I even have it on the list is amazing, considering that 2024, I feel like, was also the year of disappointing follow-ups to some amazing debut shows from a couple of years ago. And while this season is not even close to the level of quality that the first season had, I still love season 2 of House of the Dragon. This was very similar to me very, very similar. Watching this and The Boys back to back, even though they were not nearly to the same level of quality, watching both of these shows, over the summer kind of was the equivalent of watching Game of Thrones season 7 back in 2017, where it was like my summer blockbuster, in the sense of where I think that people went a little bit too hard in terms of criticizing the season overall because of the finale. And I will admit, again, there was a lot of budgetary things that went on behind the scenes that prevented them from doing the actual finale, which was clearly supposed to be the invasion of King's Landing, which was very obviously supposed to happen in this final episode and then got caught for budgetary reasons. But still, just everything that I was expecting coming off of that very, very action-packed ending of the first season, which clearly sets us up where they're getting ready for the war. I immediately went and read that entire section of the Dance of the Dragons from Fire and Blood, so I know everything that happened, so I was fully ready to go in for season 2. And even though they changed a couple of things, for the most part, it was everything that I was expecting. You know, Rook's Rest, the sowing of the dragon seeds, all the events that happened in between. You know, we got to see these characters grow and develop further. Even though Daemon did spend an entire season dreaming and hallucinating in Harrenhal, which I know pissed off a lot of people, I still enjoyed it a lot. And of course, I mean, the dragon action, like you can't get much better. Like, as if it was really the only good thing that the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones had going for it. And man, they have just upped it to 11 this season. The dragon designs, the way that they move around, the dragon action. I mean, look no further than Rook's Rest. We got a full-on 3-way dragon fight on a TV show. Like, it's absolutely insane what they're able to pull off from an action effect standpoint. I've probably gone back and rewatched those 2 sequences more times than any other sequence that I watched on TV this past year. Also, I believe this past season got the record for the most amount of pirates in Torrent. So even though it didn't necessarily have the same kind of splash that the first season did, I still loved it and had an absolute blast with it. So House of the Dragon, my number 9. Zhao, going on to you. You're number 8.
Okay, so my number 8 is when I was growing up, one of my favorite movies was Goonies. And one of the most underrated Disney movies I ever saw is Treasure Planet. So when you put those together and you get Star Wars in the mix, like, I'm sorry, I don't know why people are complaining about this show. Skeleton Key is great. It's a lot of fun. He brings finally something that it pisses me off a bit when it's like about the Star Wars thing. It's like this huge universe, but it's always about the same characters, the same things. This one got a little bit away, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Jude Law as playing a dick is always great. He was
Goes
born
all the way back to
play
Mr. Ripley.
that.
He's great at it.
Yeah, he was born to play that. So like, I thought this show was really good. I thought that they're like most shows, when he goes along, he starts kind of trying to fill it up to have a bigger run time, to have more episodes and stuff. He gets a bit like diluted, but it was still a lot of fun. I thought like the effects were great, like the robots, the pirate things. And I think it's like a great side of like Star Wars that should be more explored. And I had loads of fun of it. Like, it was one that kept me coming every week to watch, something that we are not used to anymore. We used to like just binging this show. So every week I was coming back to watch it. It kept me interested. And I think people didn't give it a lot of chances because of the Acolyte. Everyone was like pissed off with Star Wars, and we thought, oh, not another one. But I just really love that Goonies kind of like feeling that he had.
Yeah, no, you nailed it on the head, because it's exactly because of the Acolyte that I didn't watch this, and then everyone was saying it's great. I'm like, every time this happens, like this is my track record with Star Wars TV shows. I watch something that's pretty good, then I watch something that's bullshit, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna watch the next one, and the next one turns out to be good. I'm like, fuck, now I gotta get back in on it. I watch something, it's good, and the next thing is bullshit, and just the cycle continues. You know, that's why after a certain point, I'm like, Mandalorian season 3 pretty much wrapped it. We're getting the movie afterwards. Every other Star Wars show has been crap except for Andor. I'm like, I'm waiting for Andor season 2, and that's it. And yeah, but I'm glad at least that this show was actually like pretty good, because for the most part, yeah, you're right. Everybody has only had good things to say about it. So I will be checking it out at some point in the near future, maybe, possibly. We'll see. Eric, you're number 8.
Yeah, so, and I'll just say before I get to my number 8, yeah, I did watch Skeleton Crew, and I did like that one. It didn't quite make my top 10, but I did have a fun time with it. I wasn't even expecting to watch it because, like I said, I didn't get through the Acolyte, and then I gave it a chance, and yeah, it was an enjoyable, fun time. So yeah. But yeah, my number 8 is another one I just finished recently, and that's one of Dom's honorable mentions, Creature Commandos. I just had a lot of fun with this. It's sort of just one of those things that's very much my thing, and just very easy for me to digest. I love James Gunn, love anything, or not anything, but love Marvel and DC stuff. So was kind of an interesting way to start off the new DCU. Just because it's also simultaneously like a follow-up, like a direct follow-up to James Gunn's DCEU stuff. So it felt like it's as much in that old universe as it is in this new universe. So it's kind of bizarre the way James Gunn's starting all this, but like I don't know if it's smart, but I like it because I still like a lot of the DCU. So I sort of weirdly like that it still kind of has its hooks in this new universe, but I don't know if that's a smart thing or not because I know a lot of people don't feel that way. But yeah, it was fun. It wasn't definitely wasn't one of probably the weakest Marvel or DC thing James Gunn has done, but I like just spending more time with some of the characters from the Suicide Squad, like Weasel, that we didn't get to see much of. He's just such a bizarre, freaky character, and yeah, and it gave us a few little kind of hints of what this new DCU will be like without also really telling us much at the same time and still keeping it pretty cryptic. So yeah, it was just kind of a fun show, and yeah, it's also interesting how this is like directly going to tie into Superman, where that's like probably going to be something that the whole family can see, and this is obviously more like the Suicide Squad, and it's like hard R. Yeah. So I find it amusing how James Gunn's kind of like already making this this new universe very like eclectic with his kind of choices he's choosing to like start it all off with. Yeah, so it was just like another Suicide Squad, but as a show, and not as good, but it was just I had a smile on my face while I watched it, so it had to make my top 10.
Yeah, I had a smile on my face up until that final episode. I'm like, oh man, it was just something about it where I'm like, I'm mad that I didn't see it coming, but still, I'm like, it kind of let me down. I'll say this about Creature Commandos: I enjoyed it a lot, but it's one where, unlike his previous two efforts so far in DC, the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, the parts were better than the sum of the parts. Where individual episodes, specifically the GI Robot and Weasel episodes, and also the Phosphorus episode too, were just so unbelievably good, but then like the way that those kind of overhanging plot lines carried out, it just felt like it left a little bit to be desired. So that's why that didn't make my spot. My number 8, like I said, lower on the list, but again, it's made my top 10. One of the few, I think it's the only show that has premiered in the 2020s that has made my top 10 every single year so far, and that's Slow Horses, season 4. Which the fact that we're already this far into the run is insane. This is based off a 9 novel series by the author, who I believe his name is Mick Herron, basically about, again, like the office janitorial kind of spy fuck-ups for MI5 that get shunted off to this like backwater office building to just essentially wait and die out, and then somehow end up consistently getting involved in these crazy spy missions that go back into the history of MI5 that end up and then they end up consistently having to bail MI5 out. It was going to be pretty tough following up season 3 last year, which was one of the best seasons of television that I've seen in a long time. But, and so as a result, this was kind of more of a setup transition season for the next couple seasons. We got a bunch of new characters were introduced. We said goodbye to some characters that were very, very dearly beloved. We also got some very bizarre story twists that we did not see coming. We got a very charming villain this time, played by Hugo Weaving, who's again an Australian but doing an American accent in this, so that was just a lot of fun. It just continues everything that we love about Slow Horses. The action's great, the British sleek, the fact that the 6-episode runtime is like just the right amount in order to tell its story while leaving you still satisfied but wanting more. And of course, just Gary Oldman playing an absolute like drunk, fart bag, smelly, curmudgeon-y, just waiting to die, but just consistently the best at everything that he does. Yeah, it's just everything more that I love about this show, and I hope it continues to be great, and I hope they continue to put out new seasons every year, and I believe that as of right now, season 5 is set to air this year. So yeah, it will probably make my top 10 every single year until we start getting some new shows that start to kind of filter it out as the cycle goes. Joe, you're number 7.
I don't know if I like this because of the nostalgia, but like this is something that's from my childhood. So X-Men 97, it just brought like I loved how they didn't went full futuristic on the animation. It still feels like the old show. Oh, I see. I have a shirt there in Eric, so
yeah.
Mike can
Yep,
support.
got the shirts.
Yeah, but I thought it was really good, and I loved how they were able to bring it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, showing off.
So
Yeah,
I loved how they were able to bring that like feeling from the show from before, but brought in like new characters and did new things, and it started getting a little bit. I don't like when the shows start getting too much, too confusing, too over the top. I think like when I start seeing something, I think that there's no way you guys are going to get out of that, and they still do. So I loved more the beginning than the end, but I still think it was a really good show, and I think it was very hard to do because the expectations, like the fanboys that like were ready to like complain that it didn't look good, it didn't look this, it wasn't that. So I think he did a really good job, and it was another one that I had a lot of fun watching it. So I had to put this one in.
All right, the first entry that I can say has made all three of our lists. Won't spoil where on the lists they are. Eric, you're number 7.
yeah, my number 7. Okay, this one's probably gonna get me a bit of flack as well, but just for the placement. But my number 7 is Arcane.
All right. It's not unheard of. It's not unheard of.
Yeah, so I know I'm not sure Zhao's thoughts on it, but I know Dom is a lot higher on it, but obviously it's in here. I really liked it. I actually just finished it last night. Yeah, so it's sort of one I'm still kind of like back and forth on. Like, I don't know, it's one of those ones where it's like, obviously I'm not as in love with it as some people, so I'm still like wondering if like I'm missing something. But at the same time, like, yeah, it's a really like cool, interesting kind of story, and obviously it's extremely unique in terms of like the art style and just like telling that kind of story in animation and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I thought the finale was pretty like satisfying, but at the same time, I do feel like season 2 was like just like a little bit rushed. I guess because it felt like maybe they had to like wrap it up, right? But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know, I dug it, but yeah, I'm not quite on the level of, I know
You're not on like the super fanboy level.
Yeah, I'm just I think, I don't know what it is. I guess maybe like I found like sometimes it's like a little bit like, and I mean this is probably gonna sound more negative than I am just because I'm basically explaining why it's not higher. But I mean I just feel like a lot of it was just kind of like, I don't know, I felt like the soundtrack sometimes was like a little bit like too in my face and things like that, and I'm like, I didn't really like
the music video elements of it.
Yeah, so I mean, but like, yeah, I liked it best when it felt like some kind of sci-fi steampunk version of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's like, I loved like without saying many spoilers or anything, like I loved like the battle and stuff in the last episode was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I liked all the characters, but yeah, I can't say I like would have it higher because I just didn't get as invested in the story and characters as I would with some of the ones I have placed higher on my list. And not that I have any real particular gripes with it, but yeah, it was very unique, and it's sort of one of those shows I maybe respect more than I'm fully always enjoying. I did enjoy it at times. It was sort of an up and down one, a little bit like Shogun, but obviously made the top 10, so I got a bit more into it.
I'll make you feel better because I don't even have it on my list.
Oh, wow.
I do not see what people see in that show.
Really? Okay. First Arcane hater that I've met.
Oh.
This is gonna be
Have you watched it?
So me with shows is like this. If I'll give it 4 or 5 episodes a chance, even if I don't like the first ones, then like if I don't like it, I don't. And like from the first season, another show that is not going to be on my list, and it's on every goddamn person's list. But I saw the first 3 episodes, and then people said, "Oh no, you have to watch another 2," and it didn't got me. Is The Bear. I do not,
Yeah,
because I think I
actually,
was expecting a comedy, because it's always like, it's always winning awards for comedy, and I was expecting a comedy.
Yeah, and that's another classic awards
You
mishap
gotta-
right there.
I went in and I was like, okay, this is not fun at all.
No,
and I think it's
not at all.
You
and I
got to
think-
take the comedy thing with a grain of salt from all the
Yeah.
award shows.
Yeah.
And I think the problem I have, for example, with The Bear is I have a very stressful job. I don't want a show that makes me feel stressed. And I was like, look, I'm not gonna get off work and feel like I'm so I think that's the problem. But with Arcane, I think the problem with me is, so I work with design and advertisement and stuff, and the animation for me is a problem. Like, I don't know, there's something there that bothers me, that is like, and if I don't get into that, it's weird. So I just never got into that show. I don't see why everyone's nuts about it. So
it is interesting to me how, since the second season came out, and that's the one that got all the attention, right? The first season, as much acclaim as it did get, the first season was kind of like, it came out still kind of in the throes of COVID, so it was more of like a niche show, right? The League of Legends had, but ever since the second season came out, and that's the one that's gotten all the attention, it has been interesting to see people's reaction, because it's another one of those shows where, even though I love it, I see everyone's criticisms and problems with it, and I do understand where they're coming from, because, you're not the first person that I've heard that has a problem with the animation style, because I know for a lot of people, they're like, yeah, the animation, it can be a bit much. I know, Eric, what you were saying, the soundtrack, again, it's made by the video game and music video production company, so it's understandable why that can be a turn off to some people. For me, it works, but, like, I do understand why people can be as opposed to it as they are. My number 7. Like I said, Zhao, I thought we were going to be neck and neck with having X-Men 97 in the same spot, but I have it one above you. My number 7 is Legend of Vox Machina, Amazon's co-production with Critical Role, the adaptation of their multi-year-long Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which they then turned into an animated TV show, which brings in all the voiceover cast members from the original campaign, and this was the best season yet. It was very much a continuation of Season 2, where after they killed Umbrasyl, they're trying to kill the last couple of dragons, and their journey takes them to all sorts of different spots to go through all sorts of new character shifts, and it ends with the main company of Vox Machina breaking up, at least for the time being, until they come back in order to face the next threat. And so, for me, it was probably the most mature, and that's the thing that surprises me always about the show, is even though it has, once again, a very juvenile sense of humor, like a lot of Amazon shows of this ilk, the way that it's still able to make each of its characters, who, again, are all fantasy creatures, too, go through these very mature and very, very tragic arcs, too. Like, these characters get raked through the coals this season, and it really, really does have some moments that make you go, oh man, well, you don't know if these characters are going to make it out, but they still do. The action is incredible. There's, again, probably the second best use of dragons in anything outside of House of the Dragon. I absolutely love the show. I recommend it to anybody who's a fan of fantasy and animated storytelling, and also just incredible. Like I said, the fact that you still have the same original 7-8 people who started the campaign. I think it's 10 years ago now, back in 2015, and they're still going strong. Amazon just recently greenlit another one of their campaigns, The Mighty Nein, so I'll be very much looking forward to that. But yeah, Vox Machina is one that I'm going to be championing every single year. Zhao, you're number 6.
So my number 6 is another show that you guys kind of shit on. But like, I just found it so goddamn curious. I was just so invested, and that's Baby Reindeer.
Okay.
I just found it that so anything that's weird, and there's, okay, it's not a true story completely, now we know, but
Right.
anything that's that weird and that is based on a true story, like, kind of gets my attention. And I thought I was really invested in all the news outside the show, and like the interviews and stuff, and like seeing those characters and seeing just how good the performances were. Because this is the thing, like, if you see the real person and you see the actor, and you go like, God, they really got that person right to the spot. And it was just everything about it. And like that double standard of what is being a stalker and what's like someone that's kind of provoking it also, and then becomes a victim and all that. I just thought it was really good. It just got a little bit more on my nerves when it started getting so popular, because when it started getting so popular, it was just everything was being dissected, and I think it took a little bit away from the show. But I just thought the show was really good. The acting was amazing. Just the way everything happened and how they set it up right to the end. I just got. I know it's not a great show if you look at it, but I think it's that voyeur kind of things that we have in us that makes us look at where, when there's an accident or something, you just want to see what the hell is going on with these people. And I just really got invested. So Baby Reindeer got high on my list.
Yeah. I will say this, like I said, the performances in the show and the acting, some of the best acting that I saw all year. Like, I don't want that to fall through the shuffle. It's just that, like you were saying, as time went on, like the popularity of it and like kind of the dissection of it and finding out like what was real, what wasn't, and also again just kind of, I feel like it was another one where the first half was like really, really interesting and investing, and then as it went on, it kind of just felt like misery porn for the sake of misery porn after a certain point, where it's like, oh my god, how much more? Like, honestly, like once we found out about the fucking, like the him getting stalked was one thing, but once we found out about the rape, I was like, oh my god, like there's just, I don't know, it's just like, I'm not usually one to get queasy about certain things, but this one was one where, like, yeah, that kind of got to me after a bit. Eric, you're number 6.
Yeah, my number 6 is actually one that I kind of like am shocked didn't end up higher, but yeah, that's House of the Dragon season 2, and yeah, this was probably this was my most anticipated show, I think, probably of the year, and I was really, I was pretty into it throughout, but it was like, I think I was never kind of this kind of lukewarm, I think, on any season of Game of Thrones or or the first season of House of the Dragon. And it was the first season that obviously still solidly in my list because Game of Thrones and stuff is like one of my absolute favorite things ever. But yeah, aside from like certain sections of the show, I did for the first time in the whole franchise kind of feel like they were giving us a bit of filler, like you mentioned with the stuff with Daemon and stuff, having his hallucinations and stuff like that. It might have been okay if that was like 2 episodes or something, but it just kept going. And that's something I think you can't really. I know people will say the first couple. It's funny because I feel like I'm just like shitting on all my top 10. Just explaining why they're not higher. But yeah, so but yeah, basically, like I'm still really into it. I'm still like fascinated by this world. But yeah, it was definitely a step down, I think, from the first season, and it was sort of like the opposite of the first season, where the first season was like almost, if anything, like it was maybe going a little too fast at times with all the time jumps, but that sort of differentiated it from Game of Thrones. Whereas this season felt more like a season of Game of Thrones, but like not as much was happening as any season. As much as people will say that the first couple seasons even might be a little bit slower, but there was always something a little more going on at the same time, and there was usually more of like a crescendo. Like whether you have season 2, you have Blackwater or something, but this one, I guess, yeah, it did have the I guess the Battle of Rook's Rest in the middle, but then it was sort of like it never really picked up again from there. But that being said, okay, it's in my top 10. Still really enjoyed it. All the acting's just outstanding in that show. Yeah, no, I'm very curious to see where it goes, and yeah, it's one of those ones I think I'm hoping at least will be like better once we've seen what it leads to in like the 3rd season, right? So it's sort of like a tricky one to judge right now, but yeah, I know even George R. R. Martin was like not happy with the season or something about they changed some things. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's still Game of Thrones, still great, but I will say, yeah, it's my least favorite season in the whole franchise, which
it's
I
not
know
my
is a hot
least.
take.
Yeah, it's not my least favorite. I probably still like it more than the final season of Thrones, but Yeah, I agree. My whole thing is like, if they made this 3 seasons of 10 to 12 episodes, it would be like on the level of Thrones, if that. But like the dragging it out and then wanting to be at 4 seasons, shortening the episode count, dragging out certain subplots, like it needs to be like certain things need to be condensed and certain things need to be like we should have gotten like this should have been like the action season. That was always the thing that differentiated the odd from the even season of Game of Thrones. The odd seasons were always the build up to the massive shocking twist. The even seasons were always the action ones. But also, like you were saying, Game of Thrones made much better use of the fact that it had a much lower budget, so they could, again, there was a fact that they didn't have to depend on the massive, CG effects with the dragons. That's part of the reason why the productions are so dragged out and why we don't get as much action, The fact that we only got Rook's Rest and Sowing of the Seeds this season is very telling. Real quick, which sequence, just because, Eric, you and I, we always nerd out about this stuff, which sequence for you worked better, Sowing of the Seeds or Rook's Rest? Because I go back and forth as far as which one I liked more.
I mean, Rook's Rest was definitely the one that really threw me for a loop more. But yeah, no, the Sowing of the Seeds was pretty interesting with them all like kind of, just, I don't know, it was just such a shit show. So it was interesting
it's
in
one of
that
those
way.
things where it's like they're throwing a little bit of humor in there in the tragedy, where Game of Thrones Game of Thrones did this too, but House of the Dragon I feel like does this more, where there's like a self-awareness of the violence, where it's like, oh yeah, like all these people are lined up in front of this dragon, like, and you're like, okay, well this is gonna be a feeding frenzy, right? That it is, but like the shock value of it is still like kind of funny when it happens, and then like the way that the dragon seeds end up being who they are, and how that's been like built up throughout the season. Like you kind of know it, but the way they're able to like
I think that was one of my issues with it too, was the fact of like just the fact with the dragon seeds, it was such a weird way that I feel like they introduced them.
Right.
Like whereas in Game of Thrones, I don't feel like they would have ever like introduced characters like just so unnaturally. Like I think in Game of Thrones, I would have expected that. I think it almost would have been better if you like were introduced to those characters during. I know you wouldn't have been as invested in them yet, but like if the Sowing of the Seeds is like where you were introduced to them, because it just felt like we're suddenly like we're following them and we're like, okay, I guess these guys are important, but so far they don't really have anything to do with the rest of the story. Where that would be a more natural way for them to come in from the perspective of the characters we're already following, right? So like I feel like. And then they would be characters after, but I felt that was just like an awkward, unnecessary way to like have them in and have this like backstory about this guy and his wife and their dad. Like I don't know,
agree.
It was odd.
Especially because again, if we're going based off the book, that wife character is never coming back. So like, what was the point of that? So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
My number 6, Zhao, you talked about it already. Eric, you got the shirt. You're going to talk about it in a little bit. My number 6, X-Men 97. So far, the only entry that has made all 3 of our list. I went into this. Obviously, as a big X-Men fan, but having never watched a single episode of the original 90s show, but I've watched probably every X-Men property since. I've seen all the movies. I've seen both the early 2000s X-Men Evolution show and the Wolverine and the X-Men show that they did on Nickelodeon for only one season. I also saw they did this X-Men anime back in the day. So I've always been a big X-Men fan. So naturally, they've obviously the MCU was desperate to introduce the mutants. We obviously got Deadpool and Wolverine. That was a big homage to Fox this past year. But this was the other thing that really was starting to show, like, okay, the X-Men are coming in the MCU. It's just a matter of when. And again, having not watched a single episode of the original 90s animated series, but being the big X-Men fan that I am, I absolutely loved every single minute of this. I'm like, yeah, this is everything that I love just about the core unity and identity of what X-Men is and of what they represent, both within the comic book sphere and in the real world. It was great seeing kind of a team that is not as familiar to me. Like, obviously, you've got the big players like, Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, Beast, all that. But then a couple new players who I feel like, obviously, if you're an X-Men fan, but I feel like the mainstream fans haven't gotten to see as much, like Bishop, like Cable, like Morph, like, what's it called? Like Forge, all these characters that, again, are very, very well known within the X-Men chronology, but are not as well known to normies. They also do a little bit of a twist on Magneto, and then the end fight as well. Like you were saying, they do introduce a lot, but I think probably what this show does best is it being essentially a 5th season to a show that ended well over 25 years ago, but still managing to maintain its own unique identity but also not like alienating fans. Like if you were a fan of the original X-Men 90s show, it's a great continuation. If you've never seen a single episode of the original 90s show, as far as this being kind of your introduction to that world, it works on both fronts. So just as far as it working as a story on a storytelling mechanism, that was great. And then yeah, as far as all the rest of the X-Men stuff, and also again diving into some of those more niche X-Men storylines, like the Madeline Pryor clone arc, introducing Mr. Sinister right off the bat, the Bastion subplot, really getting into characters like Boulevard Trask, like Henry, what's his name? You also see other locations like Genosha as well. The way that they use the Sentinels and make them like a threat probably for the first time since Days of Future Past. Also, the fun little inserts from all the other greater Marvel characters around it. It was just great. It was awesome. How could you not love this show? X-Men 97, my number 6. Zhao, all right, we're into it. The top 5. What's your number 5?
Okay, so my number 5 is a ripoff of a show that I used to love, and I don't care because I had fun. I wanted to see more episodes of the original show I never saw. It doesn't have the best visuals, but Supercell, I just thought it was very cool. Like you see that they don't have the budget of like an American show, but it was a ripoff of Heroes, and I was a big like fan of Heroes, and they like copy the like to the detail, like the time travel, everything. But I just didn't care. It was really cool to see like people with like these special powers. That it's and it's one of the things that I think it fits really well with the show because he looks almost like someone captured with a home camera. It's not like highly detailed and stuff like the effects, but I thought it worked really well. I thought the acting was cool. And it was just a fun show. It's not like, I know it's not the best one, but I had a lot of fun with it. And it was kind of just a way of seeing what we see in The Boys, what we see in like these Marvel movies, but in a more simple way. And I kind of like that. They focus a lot also on like the problems that these powers give to the people they live with, like the family relationships and what these powers sometimes people might think, oh, they're so cool, but they become a issue. So I just really got into it. Don't know now they're going to continue. This is my problem. Like they're going to do a second season. So see how it goes. But I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, this trailer looked pretty interesting. It seemed engaging, but man, you say that it ripped off Heroes. I'm like, oh man, that's giving me bad vibes. Because you're right, I love that first season of Heroes. The rest after the fact, but that first season of Heroes, man, you want to talk about them coming out of the gate swinging. Fantastic. Yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen Heroes, watch the first season, just again at the time of the 2000s when they were still trying to figure out superheroes on both movies and TV. The first season is one of the all-time greats, and this is also this is also at a time when every network TV show was trying to rip off Lost style. Prison Break did this as well, but Heroes was probably the one that really nailed it. And then you want to talk about a show that got screwed by the writer's strike and never recovered. Oh man, Eric, you're number 5.
Yeah, so my number 4 and 5 are really like on par, and I've even been going back and forth like as we've been talking. But I think for number 5, I am gonna go X-Men 97.
All right. Wow, so we literally had it 7, 6, 5. That's funny.
Yeah. It was like I said, it's really close. It was almost number 4, but I think just my number 4 just appeals to me specifically even more, despite I'm wearing the shirt. I know, but yeah, so X-Men 97, I mean, like you guys have already talked about it. It was just a nice kind of revival of that 90s animated series. I guess it works even if you haven't seen it. Like you said, Dom, I did over like the past year or more before this one came out, I did go back and I watched that whole 90s series, and I'm still trying to get through some of the other 90s Marvel shows. But I liked the show way more than the original one. I just, for whatever reason, a lot of the 90s Marvel's cartoons never really hooked me that much. Compared to like the DC ones, at least I always liked the art style of the DC ones more, like the Bruce Timm art style and stuff. But that being said, yeah, no, I thought this show like really just kind of tied that whole continuity together, and it even had like the cameos from like some of the other animated series that are supposedly in that same continuity, like Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and Iron Man and stuff. Yeah, no, it was it sort of just distilled a lot of what you want out of an X-Men story, and got a lot more kind of crazy and comic booky than we've seen, I guess, probably in the movies even. Yeah, no, it kind of it made me think of like, oh man, this would be cool if we got to see this in live action though, like especially with like, yeah, it just, I mean, the X-Men to me still are always going to be like the ones that I'm like think of as my X-Men are like the early like Fox kind of era movies.
Right.
Not as much like the later one, not like the post Logan ones, but yeah, no, I mean, so I just thought, it just made me think like, oh man, like it would have been cool if we could have like continued with that like original continuity almost, and done some of these crazier storylines or something, because they even like, so I liked it in that way, weirdly, like probably a different way than other people liked it, but like,
Right.
I'm like, oh, this is kind of a cool way that it like you see like a lot of this stuff was sort of even like set up, like they could have gone this way in the live action movies if they kept going, like
Right.
with that original cast, like post Days of Future Past and everything, you know,
Right.
after they reset the timeline. But then they just never really obviously did any more.
Instead, they did Age of Apocalypse with the younger cast, and it was sucked.
Yeah.
And then they did Dark Phoenix again, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
why?
You know, and honestly, like Apocalypse, I have fun with. I like it, but yeah, it's compared to, I know you hate it. I've seen your letterbox, but
It's pretty awful.
Yeah, but Dark Phoenix, I definitely didn't like, but yeah, no, but anyways, as far as this show goes, yeah, no, it was, I wouldn't like necessarily call it my all-time favorite take on X-Men, but it was cool to just I sort of like suddenly like I got a bit more why people like the 90s show because of this show.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Definitely.
Even
100%.
though, yeah. So yeah, no, I feel like you guys talked about it as much as yeah, I feel like you said most of what I'm going to say. So
yeah. Like I said, I have a feeling it won't be the last one, but the fact that this is so far the only entry that's on all three of our lists is very, very telling. My number 5, again, the ultimate example of when you have them adapting a series that is complete. Man, these two cook with gas. 3-Body Problem. I binged all 8 episodes of the show over the course of 2 days. I was invested completely. I'm like, I had no idea what to expect going in. Like, when you have a book that my friends are reading and they can't even describe the plot to me, where I'm like, okay, what is this show about? They're like, it's about physics. There's a lot of physics involved. I'm like, that tells me nothing. Like, what is this about? And then I see what they're pulling off, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, this is like genre filmmaking on a level that is like so far into the future and visionary, where essentially what this show is you've got, it starts off as kind of like a conspiracy thriller, a conspiracy mystery thriller surrounding a series of suicides around this group of young physicists working all around the world that are kind of being investigated by this super secret government task force. And then there's also this cult involved as well. And essentially the revelation is that the Earth is actually being infiltrated by these alien life forms. The twist is that these alien life forms are of a different, I don't even know how to describe it, but are of a different kind of technological standing, to the point where it's going to take them for, what is it, something like 300-400 years to arrive on Earth. So even though they've been laying the seeds there for their arrival, the kind of overhanging existential problem of all of the characters we've come to know over the course of this 8 episodes having to begin to gear up to begin to arm the Earth for a problem that they will not face in their lifetime, that they are essentially having to gear their future descendants for. It's one of those things where it's like, as a concept, you're like, it's kind of a little bit Watchmen-y, where you're like, this shouldn't work as a concept, but the way that David and Dan are able to adapt this and make it feasible and understandable and really fun and really out there, like, there are some wild concepts out here that I've never seen on a sci-fi show before, and some unbelievable action. There's a sequence that involves lasers tearing up a military vessel. That is one of the craziest action sequences that I have ever seen anything. Also, a really awesome and interesting and different cast. Hovind Adepo, Benedict Wong, couple of Game of Thrones alumni thrown in there. Liam Cunningham, Conleth Hill, bunch of others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Jonathan Pryce is in there as well. Also, a very, very tragic subplot involving cancer as well that also goes in a direction that you would not expect at all. It's really one of the most out there and different feeling sci-fi shows as well. And it really kind of got overlooked and shafted by Netflix. Netflix renewed it, but only because it got an Emmy nomination. Like, they were ready to cancel this. And it really sucks because it shows that David and Dan still have gas after Game of Thrones, you know, when all their other kind of prospects fell through that they were trying to aim for. So, yeah, definitely really, really enjoyed this one. One of the few shows that came out this year that I can definitively say had it where it counted quality-wise. So, yeah, 3 body problem. Really enjoyed this one. YOLO, you're number 4.
Okay, so my number 4 is gonna sound weird because my biggest issue is that it's way too perfect, and it's Shogun. And my issue with it is that for the kind of show that it is like, first of all, is like it's over 9 hours, or it's long, and
10 hours, yeah.
I still feel there's a lot of characters that were undeveloped because there's a lot of plot and the politics and stuff, but then everything looks so perfect. Like, the acting is amazing, and that's not an issue. But even the battle scenes and stuff, the battle scenes are crazy. But I don't know. There's something there. Like, I watched the original TV show that wasn't very good, but it felt more that you were in that world. When you like seeing Shogun, everything looks so beautiful. Everything looks so, and for me, it takes me a little bit out of that kind of era of like the samurais and stuff. But I just think it's really good. It's like it takes a lot of effort for many people because it's slow paced in moments. Then there's like this huge, but it is still an amazing show. It's like really, really good. I'm just not like happy now that they think about doing a second season because
we're not thinking. It is in development. It is in active development.
Okay, so that's even worse because and this is the problem. Like,
yeah, add a third.
Yeah. But my problem with it, like, if you see my top 10, like, most of the shows are shows that I believe it's going to be one season and that's it. You guys were talking about House of the Dragons. I watched the first one because I thought it was going to be one. And now I'm not watching it because, like, it's like Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, I waited until it finished. I only saw it when the last episode came out, and I saw all at once because my memory is not great. And what happens is, like, when I watch a show and then there's like a year between them, I start watching, I'm thinking, what the hell happened? What was these people? So, like, when I think a show is going to take ages, so I watch Shogun, but now that I know there's going to be more, I'm kind of regretting not waiting.
It kind of ruins it retroactively. No, and I get where you're coming from. But now it's even worse because it's one thing if you only have to wait a year for shows, but sometimes with these shows, you're waiting up to 3 years, as we saw with Arcane and now Severance, which is back on. Those shows were on 3 years ago, you know? So, and it's a bad problem when it comes to Stranger Things because those kids are like all in like their mid-20s now, so.
No, and that's the thing. And then, for example, you were talking about Legend of Vox Machine. I saw the first one. I loved it. Then I didn't even remember that it was going to come. Like, now that it's on, like, I just don't get into it again. I just think, oh, no, I can't get into this again because it was so long between stuff. And there's a lot. And when it's a show that's simple, like that, like, for example, if it's a Dr. House, that it's always the same crap happening in each episode. You don't need to know everything that's gone before. But this shows that it's overcomplicated with a lot of characters, everything happening. When you come and watch it again, so Shogun is a bit like that. I'm a bit afraid that when this second season comes off, I don't even remember everything that happened on the first. So.
Well, it's even more worrisome because it's another case of where it's based off a book, but they adapted the whole book in that first season. So we're in a little bit of a Handmaid's Tale, Big Little Lies thing where you surpass the book. Or a leftover situation, right? Thank you, Eric. I knew that's where you were going. Where you surpass the book, and either it can go really well, like Leftovers, it could go sort of well, like Handmaid's Tale, or it could just go really, really bad, like Big Little Lies. Because that second season of Big Little Lies, oh man, I still remember that because I'm just like, what the hell were they doing with that second season? But yeah, I'll get to that more once I get to it on my list. Eric, what's your number 4?
So my number 4, like I said, it was really close between this and X-Men 97. In some ways, I know X-Men 97, I see why it made more of a splash, but ultimately, I got to go with my heart. This one just makes more sense to me, and I just, it's just my bread and butter. I got to go with the Batman Caped Crusader, which yeah, no, I don't know if it didn't get as much kind of attention as you'd think it might, but yeah, no, it was just I mean, if you deliver me like a good Batman story, I will eat it up every time, no matter how many iterations you do of Batman. That's why he's like my favorite character, just because I think he's the most versatile kind of fictional character that I know of. So yeah, no, it was made by Bruce Timm, who did like the '90s animated show and everything, which is, I think one of the best animated shows ever. And then Matt Reeves, I think, was also producing it or something too. So even though it's not part of his like the Batman epic crime saga, whatever he's calling it, thing, it was still kind of interesting to know he's behind it. And yeah, it just had it sort of has a similar sensibility to like the '90s show, but obviously they didn't have to target it as much at kids, just because it's just a different landscape now, obviously. So it could be a little more overtly adult. Not that it was like a hard R or anything, but and I liked how they kind of melded the look of the original animated series with sort of the kind of aesthetic in terms of like the costume and setting, more of like the original like 1940s kind of Batman comics. So it's sort of like a noir 1940s kind of vibe to it. And yeah, I don't know, some of the changes to some of the villains and stuff, it's somewhat episodic, but there is an arc throughout the season. Where some of them were cool and some of them felt like they were just kind of changing them just because it's a new version, so we got to do something different. But yeah, no, I just love Batman, so it was a good iteration of Batman, not like the best ever, but yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I'd recommend it if you.
Eric coming down to the justification being like, I love Batman. That's why I have it on there. Not 'cause it's great. It's like I love Batman so much. Kind of sticking in the Batman crime wave. My number 4 is The Penguin, which I will admit is a show that I was not expecting to love as much as I did, and I still don't know if I love it the same way that everybody else does. It certainly deserves all the acting. Colin Farrell and Kristen Melody 100% deserve all the accolades that they are getting, because those two were just phenomenal on the show. Colin Farrell was already probably the best part about the movie that came out. Oh my God, I can't believe it's been almost 3 years since that movie came out. And it's going to be another 2 before we get the second one, if that. But the thing that this show really nailed, that I feel like wasn't necessarily as clear in the first one, because again, you were still kind of being introduced to this world and this new iteration of Batman, and so it didn't really have a chance to develop the identity of the characters as much as the world building did. But what this show really did well, besides the fact that it was able to hone in on a character who up until this point has never gotten this sort of a treatment, like probably, when people think of the Penguin in live action, a lot of people probably still think of Danny DeVito, right? Let's just be honest here. But this version of the Penguin, and what this show really accomplished well, is showing how kind of... I talked on my top 10 movies list last week when I was talking about The Apprentice, about how that show shows like the transition of evil. And what this show did really well is showing how characters simply sometimes are just evil from the start, and even though, again, they kind of all come from like maybe a bad place, like he always had he was born with the deformity, and he always wanted the attention that his mom gave to his brothers that he never got, and then he saw a chance to take it. The show shows just like what an opportunist Oswald Cobblepot is, but in the absolute worst ways possible, and how he truly is possibly one of the most despicable human beings ever put to TV. I remember when the first episode started, I was like, this is all right. I'm like, it's cool that it's taking place right after the movie, and it's so closely tied to the movie's chronology and continuity, but I'm like, I've seen The Sopranos. Like, why do I care about this? And then as the show went on, and it goes further and further into just the depths to which Oz is willing to go to become number one, and his conflict with Sofia Falcone Gigante, who proves to be a much more complex character than we originally thought. She's introduced as like this Black Widow-esque figure there to kind of take revenge for her dad, obviously, and Oz trying to take over in the wake of him. And then just the relationship and the backstory that you get is just so much more complex than you would have thought. And you kind of tie off that trio with the character of Vic, who is this kind of orphan kid who lost his family in the flood that happened at the end of the Batman that Oz kind of takes under his wing, pun intended. And then you see where that relationship goes at the end. Again, it's one of the few surprises of the year where, again, it sucks that it has to be, that these types of shows have to be done around big-name, comic book-based characters, but when they're able to be done this well with this level of detail, it's really something. Like a true modern-day crime epic, if you will. Really, really enjoyed this one. All right. Zhao, number 4.
Number 4.
Oh, sorry. No, number 3. My bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
Yep.
right.
I'm like, wow. Oh, I do this at least once a list.
I was going back to the same one. So like this show, and I didn't saw a lot of people talking about it as I thought they would. He has like one of my favorite actors, even if he was in the train wreck that was Back in Action, that Netflix movie that I goddamn hated. Andrew Scott was amazing in Ripley. I love I love his performance. I'm a big fan of the original movie, and I thought it would probably be hard to beat it with Matt Damon, but he was so good. He's like this actor for me. Is like I still can't believe, if you saw Back in Action, it's like I still have to believe that he was drugged on that movie to do that, because it's just so not him.
Wait, the Jamie Foxx Cameron Diaz one, he was in that?
Yeah, he's the guy that is in love. He's the secret agent that's in love with her. It's goddamn horrible.
Why are they dragging Andrew Scott into those shitty Netflix action movies?
It looks depressed. He took it for the money, and he looks depressed the whole movie. He doesn't even look like him. But Ripley was such a good show. I loved how they did it in black and white. I loved everything about it. It was really, really good. I thought it was going to get a lot more attention, especially in awards and stuff. And I think maybe because it came so early, people kind of forgot it. But I think it's one of the best shows of the year for sure. And I loved how they still told the story that some of us already knew, but it brought in new things. And it's a show that I always recommending to people to give it a go.
Oh man, I have the dumbest, most superficial reasons for why I don't end up watching certain shows, and cause I heard that this show was getting all the accolades. Everybody who watched it loved it. One of the few shows to get universal acclaim. But the problem is, I got a little bit too like kind of overloaded on Ripley content, because right before the show came out, I watched Talented Mr. Ripley for the first time. I'd never seen it before, and obviously I just watched Saltburn previously in the fall, so I had which was also very, very similar. So I had those two like back to back in my head. I'm like, I don't need another Ripley thing, and then it turns out this may have been better than both of them. So, timing, it's always the worst. Eric, you're number 3.
My number 3 is also Ripley.
Hey, look at that!
Hey.
Yeah, so I actually haven't even seen the movie still. Like, I know of it with Matt Damon. I might have seen bits of it, but I still need to get around to that. But yeah, from what I understand, this is pretty much the same story as that, but I guess, and obviously, done like in like the black and white and everything to kind of make it like more like something that was actually made in the time it's set. And it was sort of just like, it was just really good. Yeah, it wasn't even one I was like planning on watching. Actually, my parents were watching it, and then they kept telling me to watch it, and it took me maybe 2 or 3 eps to really get into. And then once I was into it, it's just one of those shows where it's just, it's not like any crazy complicated plot, but it's just compelling because of just how it builds the tension, and it's like you just want to see what this guy's gonna do and how he's gonna keep getting out of these situations, or if he is going to. And it's just, it was just really good, and all the acting and just the filmmaking, like it was just stunning to like look at. So I do want to check out the movie at some point, and I hadn't seen that, and I still haven't seen and don't really plan on watching Saltburn. So I was fresh and ready to see the show, and Andrew Scott really, really good, and Dakota Fanning was really I mean, she was good in it too. I mean, I loved like the kind of back and forth between those two because she was the one that's kind of like onto him the whole time. And yeah, it's sort of like, I guess too, the thing that was interesting too with not being overly familiar with the story, I didn't know exactly what he was going to be capable of, because it's not really part of the reason maybe it took me a few episodes to get into. Without saying too much, it's not really until like a couple episodes in where he really starts I guess getting up to trouble, you could say.
Getting weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love our Ripley's being weird.
At first you're like, oh, where's this going? I'm intrigued, but like I don't know what's this guy up to.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, it's gonna get pretty messed up, and I was pretty hooked right till the end, and I thought it was fantastic. It's one of two shows that are two miniseries that definitely deserve to win awards over Baby Reindeer.
Yeah. I can understand the intrigue if you'd never seen a Ripley property before, but I don't know. There was just something about watching that movie, besides the fact that it came out in 1999, one of the greatest years for movies ever. But there's just something about the intrigue of like that movie capturing Damon, Kate Blanchett, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jude Law, and Philip Seymour Hoffman all right as they were like about to like really break out and become superstars. Also, I mean, I don't know, like I don't know if the character of Freddy in the show is treated the way that Hoffman pulls it off in the show, but I'm gonna give you the basic pitch. Hoffman's character, Freddie Miles, I don't know if he's introduced in the same way in the show, but in the movie, literally, is introduced by driving a car to a fire hydrant, jumping out, and being like, God, don't you just want to fuck everything you see inside? I don't know. That's one of the greatest character introductions in all of cinema history right there. So I don't know. That's going to be pretty tough to beat for me personally. And as for Saltburn, oh, wait, Eric, you don't want to see Barry Keoghan humping a grave and all sorts of other unseemly things that he does in that movie?
I don't know. Yeah, it's just one of those movies. I feel like just more and more every year there's more movies. I'm like, what? Like, I don't know. I'm starting to feel like I'm not even 30, but I'm already feeling like a grumpy old man where I'm like, well,
talk to this guy about that.
No, but I'm just like, well, what are
I love Saltburn.
I love Saltburn. No, I had a blast watching that movie, but yeah,
I don't know. I'm just like, there's always a couple movies or shows where I'm just like, oh, so this is what we like now? Okay.
Yep. I feel the same to some extent, but to other extent, I'm like, oh man, the freakier and the weirder we get.
Don't get me wrong. I don't want to like just block off things just because superficially they don't sound like something I'd like necessarily, but at the same time, there's just I don't know, there's that push and pull, and there's just, I don't know, more and more I'm just kind of like, I don't know what to make of some things more and more, and I'm like,
oh, man.
And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm just like a year older than you, but yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you're not that much older than me. So, all right, my number 3, the breakout show of the 2020 so far. It's not Slow Horses. It's not The Bear. It's Industry. This is another show that, again, hit its 3rd season this year, and it is the absolute best season. See, this is what I think of all the shows that I guess have fallen victim to the lack of monoculture that happened in the wake of Game of Thrones and COVID happening. This is the show that I feel like makes me the saddest to see that be the victim of, because, man, this is a show that I wish everybody was watching and talking about, where, again, the way that I pitch it to people, I'm like, this is the Gen Z Wall Street, but done by HBO and BBC. So all sorts of different crazy sex, drugs, like with some of the hottest and most attractive younger people who are like now aren't even like that young. Like, that was the craziest thing about watching this most recent season, is the fact that, oh, now we're starting to see them become like the older, more senior people at Pier Point where they all work, you know, and we start to see, like, by the time this season ends, like, this season could just as easily be like the end of the show if you want to, because by the time this season ends, they've all kind of moved on and gone on to other things, you know, like Gus is completely gone, you know, because David Johnson got to play an android in Alien Romulus, but Harper, Yasmin, and Robert, you kind of all see them like dealing with like their new senior positions in Pier Point. You also get some new major alumni with the addition of Sarah Goldberg from Barry, and obviously Kit Harington. Jon Snow himself gives one of the most different performances that he's ever given, where he plays this trust fund multi-billionaire son of a lord who is trying to the series this season opens with him trying to invest in with Pier Point investing with him in this clean energy, and the show once again poking fun at modern capitalism. This season is probably the most scathing indictment of wealth and class. You know, like I said, where you've got like, it's one of the more interesting shows that examines the divide between people who come from money versus people who kind of have to work their way up, specifically in the setting of London, which is so much more set around that idea of like inherited wealth as opposed to, you know, kind of working your way up for your bootstraps. So that's a very interesting dynamic that the show already has going for it. And this time, now that you've spent all this time with these characters and you've gotten to know them, there's some heartbreaking revelations that happen here, and certain things where the show plays around a lot with the idea of you wanting certain characters to be together, but then kind of reality coming in and force them to go another way. A thing that obviously was very talked about when Anora came out, but I think this show did it just a little bit better. And again, part of that is the fact that we've been spending so much time with these characters. Again, it's tough because not only did this show premiere in the height of COVID, the first season of this aired in the fall of 2020, so it's understandable why this kind of flew under the radar. And then each new season is aired 2 years after the original, but man, every time a new season of this show airs, I am just reminded of why I love this so much, why this is one of the best shows on the air, why this, to me, is the defining show of the 2020s. And I believe it has been renewed for a season 4, which is awesome because I was not ready to say goodbye to these characters yet. Also, again, Ken Leung, Miles from Lost, playing like an asshole like mentor figure going through a midlife crisis is just insane, and not one of the things that I would have thought I would get in the 2020s, but it's great. So yeah, industry, number 3. Zhao, you're number 3. Or sorry, number 2. God damn it, I did it again. Fuck. You're number 2.
Okay, my number 2 is a show that I started watching. I like just because I love one of the characters in it, and I wasn't thinking I was gonna like it, and it really got me. First, because I never thought Eddie Redmayne could be like a scary guy, and that's the Day of the Jackal. I thought that was a really good show. Like the way they did, and it's really, even if you saw it, if you saw the ending, he's not afraid of doing stuff that probably is not going to be popular. That is like kind of the bad guy wins in the end, and that's not something you see often. But the action, the setups, everything is so good. And Eddie Redmayne really surprised me here, because the idea I have of him is like this geeky guy that like harms no one, and as he goes along he just becomes the perfect character. We had like Bruce Willis playing him in a movie, and he's like this cold guy that you get scared all the time, but when you see here how he connects with his wife, how he is outside what he does, all that, it's really, really good. And he got me. Like, I saw the first episode because I was curious just to see how bad it would gonna be, and I was like, oh my god, this is not bad at all. And it just got into, and everything on it is every detail. It's never too over the top. It's never put in situations that you think, okay, this is just becoming stupid. You see him fail, you see him get it. It's it's a really good show, and it was one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah, this was one that I really, really wanted to watch. Put it on my list, and again, just could not find the time. But this is one that I am going to get to at some point because I've heard too many good things about it, honestly. All right, Eric, you're number 2. Lay it on us.
Yeah, so my number 2 is one Dom has already talked about, and that's Three Body Problem. And yeah, similar to Dom. I think I was like, for whatever reason, I was busy and I didn't end up starting it until like a week after it came out. But once I started it, again, it took me like maybe 2, maybe 3 days to watch it all. I just couldn't stop watching it. I don't know. It was just, again, I probably definitely had some goodwill towards it, knowing it was like the Game of Thrones guys, and especially since I didn't hate them after it ended like so many people did. But it was such a crazy kind of story, but I was just like immediately kind of hooked in and like pretty invested in all the characters, and it was totally different from Game of Thrones, but at the same time it sort of sucks you in terms of like it's got this kind of big overarching mystery, and you're kind of like, okay, where's this going with all these aliens, and it's it just takes a lot of like crazy twists and turns like right from the get-go. And yeah, I think it was really underrated and underwatched, and I'm glad it is getting more seasons.
It is getting more seasons. Yeah, I don't know how many more, but it was one of those things where like Netflix renewed it on the stipulation that it was only going to get a certain more seasons to wrap up the story. Because the other thing too, also that I know for a fact that they did is they adapted elements not just from the first novel, but from the third novel as well. So because it's a trilogy of books, so I don't know how they're going to do it as far as the rest of the adaptation. But like, I mean, given the goodwill that we have towards them, and again, since they are adapting a finished trilogy, I'm very confident that they're going to be able to pull off the rest of it with ease.
Yeah, because like, there was just what was I gonna say? Okay, I'm blanking for a sec, but I just thought it was like just so interesting, like the way that it ended and everything too, and I just like it's like you have to see like where that goes, and I'm not sure why more people like weren't into it, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with Netflix at that time, because this should have been a hit, because this was their big drop for March, because they had Avatar in February, and that was a big hit, and then 1 month after this, they had Baby Reindeer, that was April, but yeah, I don't know why this didn't catch on. I'm trying to remember if there was something else that was airing at the same time. Maybe it got lost in the shuffle with Dune 2, because Dune 2 just took over everything in March, but yeah, I don't know what happened with this one.
Yeah,
I
watched like 2 episodes, I think, of Avatar, and then I was like, okay, I'm done.
I mistakenly watched the whole season.
I've seen the animated one, but I'm like, I'm not a big enough fan that I need to see this.
Oh no, see, I am a big enough fan, and I unfortunately watched all 8 episodes, and after I was done, I'm just like, why did I do this to myself? All right, all right, my number 2. What's it gonna be? Is it gonna be Arcane? Is it gonna be Shogun? Is it gonna be Arcane? Is it gonna be It's Shogun? It's Shogun. It was tough. It was really tough, because I said from the beginning of the year when I saw this, and I'm like, okay, nothing's dethroning Dune 2 for movies, and nothing's dethroning Shogun for TV. Dune 2 was my number 1 of the year for movies, and Shogun, as you guys can see, has been dethroned. Everybody who's watching knows exactly what my number 1 is going to be. But yeah, this was one that I heard a lot about. I was excited about it. I'm like, okay, feudal Japan, that sounds cool. Landgraf for FX talked a lot about his confidence in this show and how it was a big risk. It was a big swing, because normally this would be like an everyday kind of a show for HBO, but FX usually is not known for doing shows to this level of scale. And yeah, the fact that the emphasis was on, obviously, again, the thing about this show that's interesting is that it employs a very familiar structure, but it puts a lot of twists and turns on it, where it's doing the kind of the outsider entering a whole new world when you have the character of Blackthorn, crash landing in Japan with his ship. And he's kind of like your gateway into like, the politics and everything. And that kind of helps. It's a necessary, I think, narrative device in terms of understanding this world, because otherwise it would be very understandable how one would kind of be lost in all of the politicking and some of the formalities of the culture and everything. So you have all of that as far as, I guess you could say, the barriers of entry, but it goes to show just how well received the show was. The fact that it won all those Emmys, the fact that it was the most watched, most well-reviewed, most talked about show for like the first, I would say 8 months of the year. The fact that people were still talking about it even when other bigger shows started to come along and displace it. The talent was great. I really don't, like I said, there's not too much I can talk about, because everybody has already kind of voiced what it is that's great about this. And yeah, am I skeptical about future seasons, especially since they adapted the book and the show, when it was still a miniseries, had a pretty conclusive ending, obviously with that very tragic as well. Really, really love the actors. Obviously, Hiroyuki Sanada, Anna Sawai, Tadanobu Asano, Takahiro Hira. I really, really love the old man as well, the one who seppuku'd himself in episode 8, because he wasn't fully aware of Toranada's full plan. But for me, also a big standout was Cosmo Jarvis, who not a lot of people will probably know him unless they'd watch Peaky Blinders. He's the sniper who comes in for the last couple of episodes of season 5, which I just recently watched. But he became very known for his distinct voice as well, as Blackthorn. And yeah, really, really enjoyed it. It was the show of the year for the first half. So like I said, not too much more I can say on that. It's my number 2. All right, getting into it. Yolo, your number 1. I got it this time. Your number 1 best show of the year.
So my number 1 is The Penguin. So
right.
Like for me, The Penguin, what they did here in The Penguin is kind of what they did with the Joker in the movie, the first one. Is like you said, they need to stick this like big names that people recognize for people to give a chance to watch a show like this. So what I loved about the Penguin is it's not about the Penguin, it's about Oz. And the Penguin is just the name that's going to get people into it. They didn't need to bring Batman in. They didn't need to bring and like drop this like cameos and stuff because they knew how interesting the story could be. And what I liked also that I think a lot of like properties and stuff are doing with the villains, and they like always trying to show a good side of it, trying to make us kind of like get on the side of the villains. Sony tried that a lot with the Spider-Man villains. Always
Oh,
in
we
a
saw, and we
way.
saw how that worked so well for them in the year
Yeah.
2024.
So, and what they did here, especially on that end scene with Vic, is that like there's nothing good about this guy. There's nothing that can like you can see him in the different eyes, and I think that was what for me made the show. I thought the way they did, like, so for my girlfriend hates anything that has superheroes or has fantasy. She like if she sees someone like dressed in a cape or whatever, she goes, "Oh my god," and goes away. And I was watching the Penguin, and she was sitting there, and when I ended up realizing she was really into the show and she saw the whole show, and I think that was
Wow.
the thing of it. It was like such a good show about like evil, pure evil, and like Colin Farrell alone is like I don't even know how to describe that. I know it's him. I saw him putting on the mask, like the suit and stuff, and I still can't believe it's him. When I see him, like the voice, the way he moves and stuff, and Chris Emilia that I knew from How I Met Your Mother, and
She's a good
seeing her
actress.
like how she turns into this character, it's awesome. Like it was just a surprise. I wasn't ready to like it. I thought, okay, oh shit, we're gonna start with this. Like we're not even getting the Batman 2 yet, and we're going like now on these characters. What are they gonna do? Is this just gonna be a bunch of cameos and trying to make Batman show up in the shadows? And I think a lot of people the whole show are thinking, okay, when is Batman gonna show up? And he never does. Then there's just like the symbol, and I just thought it was really, really good. Again, people are talking about a second season. That I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a good idea. But this one for me was perfect.
Oh man, that sequence where Melody is going down the hallway of the mansion with the yellow dress after she's gassed, I'm like, oh, top
It's
tier
so
show
good,
right there. Top
so good.
fucking tier show. Absolutely loved it. Eric, you're number one. If I had to guess, it's probably also going to be.
Yes, it's also the Penguin. It was far and away, I want to say, like not even nothing else even really came close. No, I gotta say, and just one thing I meant to mention though, tying into the Penguin though, but with my number 2, 3 body problem, one thing that when I was blanking, I meant to say that like Dan and Dave did such a good job of, even though it's such a different kind of show, it like pulled on your heartstrings in such a way, like, and like mess with you, sort of like they did with Game of Thrones. And I thought that like that would easily be the most heartbreaking kind of show of the year, but I just want to say the Penguin outdid it even on that front, because like without like saying specifics, like after the finale, you just feel absolutely gutted and dirty, and but at the same time, it's like it's one of those endings where it's like, like the best kind of ending where it's like, okay, but like that's the only way it could have gone. And no, this show is just like I'm in the middle of rewatching it right now with some other people who hadn't seen it, and so just at the halfway point, just watched like that episode, the Sophia episode, a few nights ago again, and no, it's just like
Top tier
Yeah.
filmmaking right there.
no, just the whole show is just like sort of like I think I was describing it to a lot of people as I was watching it, even before it finished, like sort of how I know Dom's going to be talking about his number one. I was just sort of like, I'm just like, well, it's sort of the best thing ever. I don't know. It's sort of like, I don't know, like it's about as good as entertainment gets, I think. Like this show just, the way it, like, I think it elevates even, like, not that I had almost anything bad to say about the Batman. I thought it was pretty fantastic. but this just even elevates that movie and that continuity. I think just because it's sort of, I think, because I think maybe my biggest gripe with the Batman, it's not even really a gripe, but it's just sort of like, oh, okay, so we're doing another grounded Batman universe. It's like, didn't Nolan kind of already like perfected that, didn't he? But then it's like, okay, no, but this is a different one, because whereas like the Dark Knight trilogy was like great because how it was like so economic and it was like this complete story where it's like a beginning, middle, and end. The Matt Reeves kind of saga, even though I know he didn't direct the Penguin, but obviously he was heavily involved in it, is gonna sort of, it's also gonna be very grounded. I think in some ways, arguably even more grounded in some ways than the Nolan ones, despite having a more, well, no, I don't mean that as a knock on either of them, but like,
Right.
I don't see the Matt Reeves ones actually getting as fantastical as like maybe the Dark Knight Rises did with like the flying, you know. And don't get me wrong, though that's still my favorite take on Batman. And heck, the Dark Knight Rises is actually probably my favorite one. That's like a hot take, but I love them all. But no, anyways, I'm just saying though, it's like in terms of like, especially after seeing the Penguin, it feels like very like, oh, okay, this is like scary how much like the real world this kind of is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so I mean, more grounded in that way, I guess. Whereas yeah, and I feel like the difference is gonna be, yeah, it's not gonna be as much of like a long kind of story as like the Nolan ones, but it's gonna be sort of more focused on a specific bit of time, and we're really gonna like get to like sit in it, you know. With even the pacing of the movies are a bit different. It's a bit more of a detective kind of slow burn compared to the Nolan ones. And then and then if we get any more spin-offs like this, we're really just getting to see a whole different side and perspective of Gotham in a way that's sort of surprising. We haven't got this kind of thing until now, like a really good kind of like Gotham crime drama, like on HBO, since Warner Brothers could have kind of always done this technically.
Yeah, they always could.
I think the
instead
thing
we
with
had
Nolan,
Gotham. Sorry.
I think the thing with Nolan is he's a perfectionist. He doesn't know how to shoot a bad scene. Everything looks perfect. And I think for the Batman, like this style of Matt Reeves and stuff, that it's like dirty. It's like sometimes it looks unpolished and stuff. I think it works better because of that. That's why for me, it feels a lot more grounded than the Nolan movies. Because in the Nolan movies, you still have like this perfect suit, this perfect thing, everything is perfect, and like you realize that Gotham the way it is, it's not gonna, like, Batman is gonna get out of the cave and it's gonna get dirty, because like that's how Gotham is. And when you see sometimes like Nolan is like everything looks perfect, because that's the kind of director that it is. And there's still amazing movies, but
yeah,
you don't
it's
realize,
just a different, they're just like different kinds of grounded.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's
You guys seen the theory that the reason why he's able to heal his back at the Dark Knight Rises is because the pit that they're in is actually a Lazarus pit? Have you guys seen that?
Oh, wow.
It was like a recent like random fan theory, but I'm like, well, that's actually kind of cool. If that would
oh
be
man,
the case.
that's like a
That
whole
would
other.
explain a lot. I'll say that much.
Man, that's kind of crazy. That's like a whole other rabbit hole I've never.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole you can go. You will never climb out of that one if that's the case.
I thought I've talked about everything there was to talk about with that trilogy.
Yeah, right. Nope. No, there's always more. There's always more. I'm due for a rewatch myself at some point. I haven't rewatched the whole trilogy in a minute. I usually rewatch The Dark Knight every year, but let's get to my number one, which is absolutely nobody's surprise, Arcane, League of Legends. Now, again, it's another one of those things where I'm like, I understand in hindsight this is a flawed follow-up season / end season. I obviously praised the shit out of this in my initial review of it. I said that it's the best thing ever. It still may very well be, but I'm looking at that as the overall complete, like having seen the whole story now, not necessarily this individual season. I'm not going to go so far as to say it is perfect. It does have problems. Certain subplots are just there to set up for spinoffs. And it is rushed, unfortunately. It's just by virtue of the fact that the show was expensive as it was. Netflix was like, okay, you're only getting one more season to finish it up. So they, by virtue of the fact that they had to wrap it up, had to condense a lot of storylines into 9 episodes. That's why it may feel a lot more rushed and not as succinct and set and fleshed out as the first season. But for me, just it's a really 50-50 thing when I have a long time to wait for something. Because I'd literally been waiting 3 years since the cliffhangers. I was one of the first people to watch the show in real time when it dropped in November of 2021. The irony being that I had to be convinced to watch it because I wasn't initially a fan of it. I thought the animation was kind of wonky. I'm like, I don't give a shit about League of Legends. And then all my friends my coworkers at the time were like, Dom, you have to watch the show. And I watched the first episode and I was like, oh my God, like I've never seen anything like this. And then I kept watching and it kept getting better and better and better and better. And then I had to wait 3 years for this new season. And yeah, it had a lot to deal with. It had a lot of storylines, a lot of hoops that it had to jump through, but the visuals are still amazing. The soundtrack, arguably even better than the first one. And Eric, I understand where you're coming from as far as the music can be a little bit distracting, but for me, I think what the second season actually did better than the first season is that it was very, very good at making the songs emotionally poignant about the scenes that they were complimenting, right? And besides the fact that they're all awesome, it's just such a different and unique variety of songs who no song is like each other, but how kind of they're able to complement the respective arcs of the characters and the different shifts and tones that they go through, allies that then become enemies and enemies that then become allies. You're right. The show is literally pitched as a steampunk version of Game of Thrones, but it's much more so, again, an examination of class more than anything else. It's this class warfare between, like, kind of, the more the lesser downs versus the higher ups and such, and how those dynamics are constantly at fray, especially once you introduce like kind of a rogue element that all of a sudden, balances the playing fields power-wise, like the Hex Tech that's introduced here. And like I said, there is a lot of elements and stuff that they have to wrap up here, but the fact that they are still able to do it and pull it off in the way that they do it, also still have those fist pumping, heart pounding, high octane, very incredibly emotional moments. The fact that they literally have an entire episode that's essentially an Elseworlds episode, but it's all there to just complement this one character that was like a fringe character that then ends up being the dude to save everybody at the end once the final thing happens. Again, a lot of twists and turns that I was not expecting, a lot of like I said, a lot, but just it's the emotion. It's the just heartfelt, gut-wrenching emotion that really, really got me and makes this one of the more special watches that I've seen. I'm going to be interested to see what the reaction is going to be for people who go into this and are able to watch the whole 18 episodes in succession rather than having to wait between each year, or like the people who only became aware of the show when the new season dropped and then binge the first season leading into the second season. It's going to be interesting to see how the show ages over time, whether it's just going to be this random blip in time or whether it's going to have the lasting impact the way, say, that something like Avatar did, or the way that something like BoJack Horseman did. But yeah, to me, this is one of the few shows that surpassed the time in which it came out. And for me, this is going to be one of the special shows that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, honestly, having watched it. And that's why it's number one of the year. And it was the show that, when it aired, besides the fact that I watched it in real time, I didn't binge it all the way that I did with season 1. I watched it when they dropped each episode of 3 back to back. It's the only time that Netflix has ever done that. And it really, really works well, actually, because the way that the story is arced, it's arced in these groups of 3 episodes. And man, the certain sequences from this show, I'm like, I was watching over and over and over again for weeks on end. And that to me is always the mark of a good show. So yeah, it's easily my number 1 of the year. So just to recap those lists, running it down: Zhao, aka Unyolo's top 10. Number 10, Agatha, All Along. Number 9, Cross. Number 8, Skeleton Crew. Number 7, X-Men 97. Number 6, Baby Reindeer. Number 5, Supercell. Number 4, Shogun. Number 3, Ripley. Number 2, Day of the Jackal. And number 1, The Penguin. Eric's top 10. Number 10, Fallout. Number 9, Dream Productions. Number 8, Creature Commandos. Number 7, Arcane. Number 6, House of the Dragon. Number 5, X-Men 97. Number 4, Batman Cape Crusader. Number 3, Ripley. Number 2, 3 Body Problem. And number 1, The Penguin. And my top 10: number 10, Landman. Number 9, House of the Dragon. Number 8, Slow Horses. Number 7, Legend of Vox Machina. Number 6, X-Men 97. Number 5, 3 Body Problem. Number 4, The Penguin. Number 3, Industry. Number 2, Shogun. Number 1, Arcane League of Legends. Gentlemen, this has been an absolute blast. Oh man, we did it. January is pretty much over. All the recaps have been done. We have our best. We have our worst. We have our somewhere in between. Like I said, Luke and I are going to be wrapping up Lost Season 1 next week, and then we're going to have some Super Bowl trailers to react to. We're doing a full review for a Marvel movie for the first time in over 8 months. We're going to see how it goes. before we resume our Lost recap and we see where the rest of 2025 takes us. In the meantime, Zhao, Eric, could not have asked for a better co-host for this. I'll admit, I was scrounging a little bit because I'm like, oh man, I'm like, have people watched any TV at all in 2024? Thankfully, you two were able to come through. So thank you once again for that. Zhao, great seeing you again. Hopefully we'll have you back on the channel sooner rather than later. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram, Unyolo Movies blog, and we also have our webpage, unyolo.com, so you can follow us on both of them.
All right, Eric, good having you back on again. Hopefully we won't have to wait another 4 years before we have you back on. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Yeah, it was fun to be back on. I guess you can follow me on Instagram, just at Eric Thorpe Reviews, and same on YouTube, Eric Thorpe Reviews. I haven't posted a video in a long time. I don't know. Maybe I'll get back to that, but yeah.
Who knows? And like I said, there may be a certain recap for one of our favorite properties that I may consider having you on for once the new season comes back next year. But we'll see. Yeah. In all due time, we'll see where we're at when it comes to that. And of course, you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitch, all of the above. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more movies and TV in this case. We'll see you next week for Exodus, the Lost Season 1 finale. See ya.